Welcome to the latest edition of the First Day Kopites podcast. In this special edition, we have Richie, who is the owner of Kopite Club, a really interesting Liverpool supporters t-shirt company. We also got Damian Cabana, who's a frequent contributor to the Anfield Wrap. Welcome to Richie and Damian.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for inviting us.
Pleasure to be here.
Good. Also this week, we've got Sean is back. He's got over Liverpool losing last weekend.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad I missed that one.
Charlie, but no Tim this week. But so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about kind of Richie and Damon's kind of Liverpool stories. We're definitely going to touch on Hillsborough because I think there's some useful things we can learn from them, and then we'll kind of round it out by talking about Liverpool, the city, the fan culture. And stuff in that sort of space. So we'll kick it off, and Damon, Richie, you can choose who goes first. What's your earliest Liverpool memory?
Go on, Richie, you're older than me.
Thanks, Damo. I started going when around 1969-70, so when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I can't really remember what my first game was. You were just born red, and you were taken as soon as you were old enough to go. You know what I mean? So I just went every week with my dad at that point. But so the first really vivid memory I've got is probably the 73 UEFA Cup semi-final against Borussia. 73 UEFA final against Borussia Mönchengladbach at Anfield. Because we were in the main stand that night, and we were high up. It was a Wednesday night, and it was rain like you've never seen before, and the game was abandoned after 20 minutes, and we all come back the following night, like for the rerun. But on the night, I remember the referee took the players off the pitch after 20 minutes. And then they all come back on like 10, 15 minutes later to see if the pitch was playable. And the linesman and the referee were kicking the ball about in front of the tunnel, in front of the main stand. And the ball was going about 2 foot because they were like up to the waist in water. And then next minute, some scally jumped out the crowd and ran on the pitch and kicked the ball like right across the pitch towards the Camden Road stand, about like a 70-yard crossfield ball. And the whole place went wild cheering, but like they call the game off. But that's my first vivid one. Loads of other memories after that, you know, like about the crowd and little, games and all that. But yeah, that's my first one, I think.
And that's the game where Shankly changed the team, right?
He dropped Brian Hall to the bench from the Wednesday night and brought Toshak in. And Toshak, funnily enough, he was my boyhood hero. He was about 6'8" and added about 1 million goals a season. He was brilliant, Toshak.
He was. Toshak is our king, right? That was the chant.
That was the one, yeah, the Welsh song, yeah.
So, Damon, how about you? What's your first memory?
Yeah, a little different and very similar as well in some circumstances. I mean, my dad was a very passionate Liverpool supporter, and my granddad had took my dad when he was a kid watching Liverpool in the old second division. And you were either born red or you were born blue, and I was blessed. As such, but my dad was one of those old school fellas as well, where he would never show his love by kissing us or telling us so, but he'd work damn hard and work all the hours that he could to support his family. And by the time, he's got 3 young kids, he's made his mind up he isn't going to the match no more, and he still played footy on a Sunday as an amateur player, but he thought the goal on the match was behind him. And so I missed out on those years as going as a very young kid. And so my first memories of watching Liverpool is from the telly. And it's not too long after Richie there. It's the glorious summer of 1977. What Liverpool are going for the championship again, going for the iconic number of 10 league titles, which put us right out in front at the time. So that was a great thing. And of course, the glory and the dreamland, landing on the moon of winning the European Cup. And obviously being a kid at that time and the fashions of it. I remember I had a sew-on patch on me, which was the fashion of the time, on the arm of my coat. It was Kevin Keegan, the idol of Anfield. God, I wish I still had that patch, And a silk scarf, which was de rigueur at the time, which we used to tie around our wrists. And I remember very vividly this. our school was absolutely made up to Liverpool in the European Cup final. We used to get like jugs of water for to have with your dinner. But because Liverpool had been in the big final, we had red milkshake, and the school hall and it was what a treat that was, and the school also, like put the Christmas decorations up in the school hall. Well, we put red and white decorations up because Liverpool were in the final, and I remember they were all just celebrating it, and it was glorious, and it was painful on the Saturday to watch us lose to Man United in a cup final where Liverpool had played all right, and it just didn't run their way, and it was one of those things. But then that the glory then of coming back on the Wednesday night, and I remember watching the game, and as Phil Neal steps up to take the penalty to clinch it, I remember my mum, I remember her just saying, "I can't watch," and she put her hands over her eyes, and I got nearer and nearer to tell you Phil Neal was about to take it, and it went in, and as a kid, it was always going to go in, wasn't it? You haven't got that anxiety you've got as an adult where something could go wrong, and it was fantastic memories, and watching Liverpool go on to continue that. And the first actual game I went to for Liverpool was the Emlyn Hughes testimonial, so I didn't get to go till then, and that was just fantastic. What an occasion that was, and that was against Mönchengladbach, and that was a great thing. And again, I was watching Liverpool from afar, not getting the chance to go as much as I'd like to, until the mid-80s. When I'd watch the odd game, I'd go to my dad's mate to take us the odd game, or my dad would take us the odd game, but it wasn't often. But by the mid-80s, I had my own paper round. I was old enough to be going, and that was me. And once I was hooked into the fact that I could go all the home games and then onto the away games, I was off and running, and that's kind of my journey from the start.
Wow. Whereabouts did you guys typically sit in the, for the most part, in the stadium?
Well, it was standing, and it was in the Kop.
Okay.
Wouldn't want to be anywhere else, that's the traditional place. It was a little bit cheaper than everywhere else, but it was the atmosphere. And a lot of people like to watch the game on the side because you can be more analytical about it. They want a bit of comfort in sitting in a chair or whatever. I didn't want any of that. I wanted to be part of the noise and the quick-wittedness that went on to make us world famous, and that changed Liverpool from being a successful domestic club into an international institution, quite frankly, and all the romance of it. And I was very proud to be part of that. And so, yeah, as I was younger, I'd be on the side of the Kop. The old flagpole corner would be the place where I used to come in. And I'd be, as I was getting a bit older and getting a bit more confidence, going with me mates rather than, having my dad or someone take us, I'd be right in the very middle of that Kop, with all the, learning how to ride the waves of the crowd surges and the splendour of it. Greatest place in the world to ever be. That's where I was.
Awesome. Terrific. How about you, Richie? What was the place that you watched from?
I think I started off in the paddock, which was a standing area in front of the old main stand.
Yeah.
I remember watching Fairclough in '76 in a derby. I kicked off at 11 o'clock in the morning because the Grand National was obviously at 8:30 in the afternoon. And it was 0-0, and in about the 93rd minute, we got a throw in on right opposite where I was standing. And Fairclough got the ball and beat about 10 men and stuck it in their net. And that's a vivid one from the paddock. And I can remember also at 76 as well, the semi-final of the UEFA Cup. Barcelona come to Anfield and they had Neeskens and Cruyff in the team. So I remember watching them from the paddock. And then the 76 UEFA Cup semi-final was in the Annie Road end when Bruges come to Anfield and they went 2-up. Yep. And then the second half, we battered them, attacking the Kop end, and scored 3. But I was in the Annie Road end for that one, and that was incredible. I remember that, I was 11 years old then, and you're watching the Kop like surging forward, and the noise was incredible. Yeah. And to come back from 2 down there, that I think that always stood out in my mind as the best game I'd ever seen up until Istanbul. It made such an impact on me, that game. But yeah, kind of the paddock and the Annie Road, and then towards the end of the 70s, you used to get a little bit of trouble at games, you know what I mean? And you used to have half the Annie Road end was full of away supporters, so there'd be a little bit of bother in there at some games. And in the end, I think, we made the decision, right, time to graduate to the Kop, and that's where I've been ever since.
And it's funny what you're talking about there, Richie, is the fact that when I started taking my lad, obviously it's all seats by this time, but in taking him, at some point, the dad and lad section moved to the Annie Road. And I was like, it was a parallel universe because I was watching the game from behind the wrong goal.
Yeah.
But then I appreciated, and it dawned on me what the Kop looks like because I'd never thought of it. Because I was always in it. And then to look at it and think about, oh yeah, that's tell you what, that's a stand, man. Look at that, look at those flags and look at all that. And so it was a benefit really. Not something I've ever wanted, but it was nice to watch the game from there. And then
that was something as a kid to be standing in the paddock or the end and watching the Kop and the movement and the noise and when the Kop's in full cry, like that volume of noise coming towards you, and like a plane taking off, isn't it? The noise hits you. Yeah.
So a couple of things. That Bruges game does not get as much credit, I think, for because I think that was at least as good as the Saint Etienne game, which tends to get lauded as being like one of the biggest nights.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I can still remember. It was Van der Kuhls or Lambert was one of the scorers. It left a massive impression on me, that game.
Yeah, it was loud. I was in the Kop actually. I was in the Kop that night. It was loud. It was as loud as I ever remembered.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this, then it's worth YouTubing the David Fairclough goal against Everton, because he really does beat almost 10 players. So
yeah, I was going to say more, but I don't like to exaggerate.
worth a look. So let's move forward a little bit. I know both of you have done a kind of education around Hillsborough. So one of the things I think we wanted to explore is kind of just sort of what you would want people to know about Hillsborough and kind of why it's important that it remains in our consciousness even now. Yeah.
Well, I'm not on a mission to teach the whole world exactly. I don't think everyone in the world has to know about Hillsborough because there's so many tragedies across the world, so many stories, and you have got to be able to live your life to its fullest, and you've got to be able to enjoy it. And if you were weighed down by every tragedy, and there certainly are so many around the world, and I'm not putting ours above anybody else's or anything like that. But what was very clear to me was that this was a significant event. This was where people were unlawfully killed. This is where lives were changed forever. But it was lied about. And so while there was a facility to have so much information about it, and in the immediate aftermath, in the hours that followed the disaster, the story was quite there for anybody to watch. But the political agenda that took over, and then the fact that we were lied about and people would believe it, I just couldn't accept that, and that goes with the fact that I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder after what I'd gone through, to a moderately severe extent, and I just thought about a friend of mine who was unlawfully killed there. Like, use that word, unlawfully killed, because that's what we've achieved by the campaign. It's what should have been given anyway, but it's, we've had to fight for that. But I just thought, of all those people, and all those people I had such, so much in common with, and just as a human being on a human level, to go through that suffering. And, I don't think there's some stories about Hillsborough that aren't really talked about, and the suffering that went on about those who did survive, what happened. And then the rescue, the impromptu rescue by the people who survived themselves, which did a job and saved more lives. And the numbers of 96 is far too high as it is, but it would have been higher had it not been for the actions of, and the word that Lord Justice Taylor used to describe the conduct of the Liverpool supporters on that day. He used one word and he said heroic. And that was the government's inquiry. And still, we were lied about. And I just think back to, like I say, a friend of mine and another lad who I went to school with, and I just think of their families, and I just think of, I'm not dropping this. No, I was there. No, I was there. I seen it. I can tell you. And so, while there's an injustice about it and while there's lies about it, as long as there's blood in my veins and water in our river, I'll tell you what happened. And if you want to know, I'll tell you, yeah. And it is important, not just on that human story and on that perspective, but also about how do you learn the lessons of a disaster if you're not prepared to accept the mistakes that you made. You're exposing yourself to it happening again, aren't you? Whereas if people are honest and they're candid and they go through step by step and talk about accountability and responsibility, not, hindsight's there for everyone and all that, but if they take into account all the errors that were made, it means we can move forward and make the world a better and safer place. And the world is a better place now that the truth about Hillsborough is officially recorded, and it's something that can't be taken from us now. We've achieved the truth in this lifetime, which I didn't think we would. So that certainly makes me feel better walking about the earth. And I would change anything to change what happened at Hillsborough. But one of the fortunate things that I've got is I've got friends of people like Richie, who's done so much, and he gave evidence at the inquests and everything, and in such a noble and brave manner. And I've got someone that, he's like a brother to me for life, and I've got so many like that. And so out of severe catastrophe, pain, I've certainly been very exposed to the fact that I've got a lot of love and support around me too.
That's awesome. Richie,
how long have you got?
we could talk day and night about this, because like all we did was go to a game of football, and we were young lads at the time, and to go there and witness what we saw, and we, me and Damian were in the central pens, we were in the worst affected areas, to go there and go through what we went through, and then to be lucky enough to escape from that hell and end up on the pitch and end up in the rescue efforts and come home, and we were shell-shocked. And then 4 days later, for it to be all over the newspapers that we were drunk, we were ticketless, and to be blamed, and then to live the next 23 years of our lives. I mean, I said when I gave evidence in Warrington at the second inquest that for 23 years of my life, I'd been branded as a drunken, ticketless murderer by the lies that were told that day. And we all felt that. And then when the Hillsborough Independent Panel report was published in 2012, 23 years after, that was a weight lifted off your shoulders that you can't believe. We'd been carrying that guilt round with us. We knew we were innocent. We were there. Like Damo said, that was why we fought it, because when you go to something, imagine like anyone that wasn't there who's listening to this, imagine going to a concert, a pop concert, to the theatre, just to go somewhere innocently, watch something, and then days later, because something's gone wrong, all of a sudden the blame's thrown at you, and you didn't do anything wrong, but the whole world believed we did. And that burden, I mean, it caused people to kill themselves, to end their own lives. A lot of people can't even talk about it to this day. And me and Damo have thought, well, no, we're not having this. We're not having, and that's why we've fought it all the way.
Yeah.
It was effectively like blaming the passengers for a plane crashing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And we didn't have the power at the time. Here we are now, talking across the world to each other. What a pleasure this is. We just think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just saying before we started, isn't it great to be in this community that follow around the world follows this same interest with such passion and fervour? Isn't that great to be part of something? Association football, we associate together. That's great. But back in those days, in 1989, we didn't have any access to social media, any voice on the media, and so the authorities are the people who were believed. And it's very there's still it's still like a class system in Britain, very loosely, and basically you've got officers there with uniforms on, and members of parliament are there, and coming on the telly talking about being experts about what happened. They weren't even there. And what's happened over time. And I'm quite philosophical about this. I mean, I took my son, he goes to match with us all the time. He's in his early 20s now. And if Hillsborough had happened, if you just think about it in my personal timeline, what happened was I took James to his first FA Cup semi-final in 2006. And these days, when there's cameras all over the place, mobile phones, video evidence, and this, the cover-up of what happened at Hillsborough couldn't have happened because there was too much evidence. And my dad went to the FA Cup semi-final in 1965 when Liverpool go on to win the cup for the first time. He went to that final too. And if what had happened at Hillsborough had happened to him in our family in that generation, there was no media at all, no TV coverage or nothing. So the police version and the media version of events would have been believed and would have carried forward. And we were in this transitional phase, me and Richie's generation, of there was enough to be going on with, to prove our side of the story, but not enough to get it over the line. And what I found, you know, again, talking about people, you know, in your community who look out for you, there was, for a long time, we were in a very dark place, but we were the eyewitness and the passionate account holders. But the new generation who could do different websites and could organise themselves and come along and bring things together, they really helped us as well. So they were in a position with the technology to get these reports together and give us a bit more strength because we were all together. And it's been a tumultuous journey where we've all sort of been part of this pyramid, and eventually at the top, we've reached a place where we can switch the light on. That's how it is. We won't get justice in this life, but we've certainly got the truth, and that in itself is a great degree of justice.
Yeah. So Richie, you talked about carrying this around for 23 years, and Damon said that the people who don't even talk about it. To what extent are people able to easily find support and help now? If they're in that?
Yeah, I think now people can go to counsellors and things like that. But back in the day, then it wasn't a thing for a young lad from Liverpool to go and speak to someone. There wasn't counsellors. It was a case of well, don't speak about it and you'll be all right, or man up, or things like that. If someone was to speak to you about it, it was. I don't think it was really on the agenda to go and seek help about it. But times change, don't they? But
massively, yeah. I never felt guilty by it. We've got to say that I know for the fact that we were blamed and we were the accused in effect, and so I knew that applied to us. But on a personal level, because I was there and because I knew what happened, and because when we came home, we were able to recount the stories to our family, and those stories were corroborated by everybody who came home. And it felt like everybody, and I do mean everybody, knew someone who was at the game on that day. We were very confident and very assured by the fact that this little dot in England knew the score and was prepared to stand up for it. And that was the great thing, because I must say I was really struggling. You know, I mean, the place where I work in Liverpool city centre lost 2 employees who were unlawfully killed that day. And there was a number of us who went to that game, and I was off work for a lot of time. And certainly over a couple of years, I undertook counselling. But I knew also that I felt like a stigma of a sign of weakness. And where now in this modern world, you wouldn't dream of not having someone go through counselling and talking about it and things like that. That is not the world that we were in. We were in a very much more closed mind, old fashioned state. And so you have to get over this fact of like, well, you can't really talk about it because you don't want to upset anybody. You don't want to show you it was weak, but then all these lies are coming out. And it just places in a very, very difficult position. And when we've never been more vulnerable in our lives. So it was very difficult. And for a long time, you know, throughout the 90s, it was quite a lonely place, because it was almost as if, listen, it was horrific. No one could ever imagine who wasn't there what it was like. And we really feel really sorry for you, but you've got to put it behind you, and you've got to get on with the rest of your life, because you're not going to achieve your potential, and we don't want to see you down. We don't want to see you sad. But it's like, I get that, but there's lies here, and people died.
It wasn't until like Twitter and Facebook came about that the likes of me and Damian could get together and form groups with other survivors to fight it. Until then, you were basically on your own. You were, I used to go to the match with other lads, but they maybe didn't go to Hillsborough. So what you'd find out, I remember one particular night we'd been to a game at Anfield. We were out on the ale all night in town, and at the end of the night, people drifted off, and it ended up with just 2 of us. And I said to one of the other, I was upset. It must have been coming up to the anniversary or something. And I said, nobody else cares, you know what I mean? And he said, they do. He said, but none of the other lads mention it in front of you. I said, no one talks about Hillsborough. And he said, no, they just don't mention it in front of you because they don't want to upset you. And I said, yeah, but I need to talk. I mean, my head's bursting with it. I need to talk. And that was what it was. People tried to protect you by not speaking about it with you. And because you couldn't get together with other people, you felt at times as if you were going insane, because the whole world was blaming you, and you knew that wasn't the truth. It's incredible. But when that's going on for that long, for 23 years, it is a hell of a burden, isn't it? You know, to live with that for that long, and think you like feel on your own, like Damian's just said. Then you're isolated, and to feel like you're going insane on your own. Mad.
Yeah. It's a very, very difficult journey, and only the fact that, you know, like I say, it's we happen to be from a very fiercely proud place, you know, of itself, and a sense of right and wrong, and because of that, we were very fortunate to live in the area. And there's other guys who we know who followed Liverpool who aren't from that area, and then they were double isolated because they were surrounded by people who only had the national media to learn about it, and why wouldn't they believe them? You know, these are the people who read the 6 o'clock news.
That's a big thing. That's a big thing. What you say there. We were in a bubble where we were surrounded by people that knew the truth because we were in this area. But other lads who had been involved in the disaster, who maybe lived in London, who we now know, but we didn't at the time. I know what we went through. That must have been a million times worse because you're totally isolated, aren't you? And no one believes you're there. At least I always felt secure within this area because people knew. But I always thought when you were on holiday, or you know, when some people, and going back in them days as well, there was a stereotype about Liverpool where, say, you'd go to Spain with your family on holiday, and people would hear your voice, and they'd feel quite that it was acceptable to say out loud in front of you, "Oh, mind your handbag," or "Mind your," well, you know, watch that to someone like they're from Liverpool. And that was acceptable in them days, and it was those stereotypes that allowed the lies about Hillsborough to be believed, and that went on for a hell of a long time. Now, you used to watch TV programs, and it's no exaggeration to say, like, it'd be in America, you probably wouldn't know what I'm talking about now, but there's a program called Casualty, and there's another one, like it's about ER, it's probably the equivalent of ER in America or something. Just a program in a hospital where they have a little story and somebody ends up in hospital. And when, as part of that story, if ever there was a thief involved or a burglar or anything like that, they always had a Scouse accent. And for years and years around the time of Hillsborough and in the aftermath, that happened time and time again in TV programmes. They kept this stereotype about Liverpool. If you're from Liverpool, you work shy, you're a thief. It just sent you insane, but you had to keep fighting it.
I think you guys have done an awesome job in kind of giving us a sense of what the experience has been over the last 32 years. And so thanks so much for that. I don't know if Sean or Charlie have a follow-up question.
I'm just, you know, this is not the first episode we've done where we've been speaking to people actually, you know, at Hillsborough, and you know, it just, you know, the lack of accountability really is, it's just mind-boggling to me for the people who are in charge. So not really a question, just my perspective is just the people who had the lives of the entire crowd in their hands, and just the I don't know, the fact that there really hasn't been anyone who deserved to be held accountable is just mystifying.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, most people have that kind of reaction. You know, I mean, Richard have done a lot of stuff. You know, when you talk to seasoned journalists who interviewed a lot of people, spoke about it, and we haven't even talked about what it was like to be in those Central Pens and survive, or what we did on the pitch, and what we had to go through doing that as well. It floors everyone who we speak to, and usually, you know, we go into schools and you can hear the pin drop because people are just, because it's so horrific, but then it's illogical of the outcome of what happened, and the state has a duty to protect, and instead gets it wrong. Okay, things happen, there was 2 disasters at Hillsborough. One was the event of the day, and then the second disaster is the cover-up, isn't it? You know, and basically, like, you know, going back to the start of it, saying, you know, if you don't put your hands up and you don't want to learn any lessons, you're exposing yourself to it happening again. But it just basically, you know, let's talk about this. 96 people were unlawfully killed, right? And there was a series of questions at the inquest, the longest inquest in British history. And it goes through and it absolutely blames everybody apart from the fans. It absolutely, it really does. And it's there for anyone to see. So, you know, it's not difficult to find this information on the internet or wherever you want to search. And so 96 people are unlawfully killed, and all these agencies are held responsible, but no one's accountable. Scratch your head. And Britain seems to like pride itself on being this, you know, bastion of fair play and all this, you know, but you'll find on our t-shirts or whatever, it's Scouse not English, because we don't feel part of that society at all. We have to be of ourselves because we're at the bottom of their priorities. And so we'll do fine ourselves. Thanks very much. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
I just say what you said, Richie, is helpful to me, at least in terms of the thing about Hillsborough that's always been shocking to me is like how all the authorities just went along with this. You know, like how so many people went along with this. And I'll apologize because my internet connection seems to be a little unstable if I click out, but you know, it must be just this stereotype that they had of Scousers, because otherwise it makes no sense. I mean, if it was a different club, if it was a different team, would they have done the same thing? It seems to me like probably not. You know, I just don't see how that could happen. That's the most shocking thing to me, and it's the most I don't know. It's infuriating, you know. Just even as someone that wasn't there, has only been a supporter for 15 years or whatever. The injustice of it is just.
I always said it's understandable that people would believe those lies because, you know, they're asked to believe what the 3 British police forces were saying, the British media, you know, the English FA, you know, an ambulance service, you know, all sorts of people are coming out with going down the same route, or they can believe 23,500 Liverpool supporters that were there that day. Mm. So I can understand from that point of view that people would believe them rather than us. But you know, knowing what we know and knowing what went on to influence the way the rest of the country thought, it's horrific. And like what you said there about people believing it, there's a mate of ours, Tony Evans, who's a journalist, and he's one of them unfortunate people. He spent a lot of time living in London, and he used to have people saying to him, you know, just admit it. And he used to say, well, would you rob from the dead like we were accused of doing? Mm-hmm. And he'd say, well, no. You know, if you were involved in a disaster, he'd say, well, what on earth makes you think that we would? What is it about people from Liverpool that you would believe that type of allegation?
Well, the cameras that were there on the day saved the truth, and this is the point I made about the coverage going back across generations. If you think about it, it's a good point you made, Sean, about whether they get away with it or not. I actually think if it had happened to the Nottingham fans, and had the FA decided that the Nottingham fans would have been at that end of the pitch, the disaster would have landed on them on that day. And it's a good, I think they would have tried to get away with it with the Nottingham fans. And I don't know enough about them, you know, I only got respect for them as fellow football supporters. But I wonder if their campaign had gone on as long as us, because we feel disconnected from the country, that we wanted to fight that much. You know what I mean? And might they have got away with it more had it been on any other club than Liverpool? And so there was like a paradox of, we were the easiest scapegoats to make out of football fans in the first instance. But then they had a tiger by the tail because it was us. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so there's a dynamic there that goes along, doesn't it? And I think that is a very important point about the campaign to remember. You know,
yes, it suited the narrative of, you know, the time, of the hooligan, hooligan Liverpool fans. But I mean, that really hasn't. I mean, it's less so, I guess, these days. But guess 2 or 3 seasons ago when we were in Roma, and some knob pushed a guy in the fountain. Okay, he's a dickhead. But then it was all about, these, scoundrel Liverpool fans and so on. It's like, there's one in every crowd. And now because someone pushed someone else in a fountain, here we go. It's back, the Liverpool fans again. They're at it again. I was in Madrid for the final, and going out, leaving the next morning, going through the airport, a guy checking my passport or whatever says, how'd you go? Did you behave? I said, yeah, I behaved. I said, did the rest of us behave? It seemed like everything was all good. He's like, yeah, it was, but it was almost like he maybe was expecting something else.
Yeah, maybe. And it's wrong to get caught up too much in it, And it's certainly what happens, the perceptions in regards to the cover about, we're talking about specifically about Hillsborough, that was definitely something that suited them, and it made it easier for them to carry the story about us. It made it easier to perpetuate the lies about us because, like I say, we were a soft target and an easy one there. But all you can ever do is show who you are and be who you are. And I know a lot of Liverpool fans without subconsciously consider themselves as ambassadors for the club and the city, and they'll behave in a respectful manner. And whenever they're going anywhere, they'll be keen to just not on show, not trying to go out the way or anything like that, but they recognise that this club means so much to us. It represents so much of us, and give us a chance and come and talk to us, and you'll find it to be a very friendly place and a very accommodating place in all kinds of ways. And so when we go away, and don't get me wrong, our head cases are as bad as anyone's head cases. I know that. I'm not romanticising any of that. Liverpool is a tough place, but equally it's a very heartfelt place as well. And while people are keen to pick up on the negative and use that to suit their agenda, you also got to remember the positive. And Liverpool's a very positive place, positive people. Mm-hmm. And I think, like I say, the reason we're an international club is because people find it very welcoming. And the reason it's very welcoming is by definition, Liverpool's an immigrant city itself. And so many families came to Liverpool, not of the place, mine included. So, that's in our culture. So there's another side to it as well. And so you're asking the question about, Madrid, they're all expecting us to be, unruly or whatever. But I certainly seen in the aftermath, the Tottenham fans were made up with the Liverpool fans and saying, yeah, it was great. It was great to be at the European Cup final. I'll tell you what, the Scousers were sound, And it was nice that. And we should encourage that more often. And I'm very little on Twitter, I'm not on a mission on Twitter or anything like that, but I do enjoy it. And I do find, because I don't get involved in digging everybody else out, that I come across some niceness myself. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people should really, all I can say is I'm a Liverpool supporter because I was born in Liverpool, and I'm in a culture and a country here which is football mad, and there's a team every 4 blocks or whatever it is. You know what I mean? There's a team for every town, and I happen to be born in this town with this team. And if I'd have been born in Newcastle, I'd have been a Newcastle fan. So basically, I've got so much more in common with them than I haven't. It's just that the colour of my shirt's different. That's all it is. And we need to, and the world to be a better place if people reminded themselves of that more regularly.
So we can't finish up without talking about some of Richie's T-shirts, like the Scouse Not English. I'm thinking of this one, which is the great thing about Liverpool is it's not in England. Tell us a bit about kind of the thought process behind that, and maybe some more of those things that do make Liverpool different.
I think it's certainly my mindset is probably shaped through Hillsborough. The frustration with the way the rest of the country views us, and the way the rest of the country has had views about us, and the away fans that turn up at Anfield every week still singing about unemployment and all the nonsense and the way they've believed the lies. And like Damian said before, let them get on with it. When the English national team's playing, I couldn't care less. And most match-going Liverpool supporters will tell you the same.
Yeah. I care, Richie. I want them to lose.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
We should say we're recording this, by the way, while England are playing Belgium.
Are they?
Yeah.
Didn't know.
Yeah,
well, captain.
We either don't know, or you're active. You might watch a little bit of it, just hoping Belgium win. You know what I mean? But,
yeah.
We've got absolutely no affinity with the rest of England.
And how widely felt do you think that is across the city?
I've felt like that most of my life. I can remember watching, I think it was a 1982 World Cup, and I don't know whether it was like David Platt or Brian Robson scored against France after about 20 seconds, something, and I remember just sitting there, like, feeling like, you know, well, a goal had gone in against us, you know what I mean? I wanted France to win, even at that point, and that was before Hillsborough. So I've never felt anything for them, but I know a lot of people did, and like lads I've gone the match with want England to win, and they're watching, and I just cannot understand it. Apart from the way this area is being treated, you know, why would you want the likes of Harry Kane or Wayne Rooney in the past or Frank Lampard to do well or like that? And because I've got no pride in being England. I'm proud to be from Merseyside. I'm proud to be, but I'm England. I'm not proud to be from England. I think it's a corrupt little scabby island. So that's my view of it. So, and I suppose that comes out in the t-shirts that I turn out.
Is that a new t-shirt logo that's coming out?
Which one? The one I've got?
Scabby little.
Scabby, yeah. A scabby corrupt island, yeah.
It's funny, as
sorry.
As an Australian supporting Liverpool, that's one of the things that's drawn me even closer to Liverpool, because I don't have a whole lot of affinity for the English either. And so the fact that, you know, it's, well, good, I'm supporting the one team that identifies as not being a part of England. And then every time I see these videos of the English fans chanting, you know, anti-Scouse, you know, bullshit, and it's like, well, you know what, you're just reinforcing my decision here. Yeah.
Well, when you're watching any other English team on the telly, you'll see a load of the Red Cross flags and all that around, but you'll never see one of them in our end of the ground. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So back in the 70s and 80s, maybe not the 80s, but certainly in the 70s, I think you did see like one of the national flag. I mean, not everywhere, but people did have banners. But I can't recall in the last 40 years plus ever seeing anything like that.
I think that just comes from, I mean, you've got to be accommodating, haven't you? You know, I've got friends who do like the England team, you know, not much, but some of them do. And in the end, that is the right path. That's what should happen, because it's representing everybody and it's inclusive. And so I don't, you know, the Liverpool players who play for the English team, or, you know, I've got friends who, you know, who like the World Cup and they want England to win, you know what I mean? I don't want them to win, but, and I'm like, well, okay, I accept that. You know, and you must be accommodating, and if you want to be inclusive and recognised as such, you've got to include them as well, haven't you? You know, if you're honest, and so I do, and so I just say, well, look, good luck to you and all that, but, you know, I hope you get beat. But you know, and that's it. So, but going back to the Union flag thing in the COP and that, you know, it was a thing of the 70s because it was all new, wasn't it? And it was a very, you know, the world feels like a much smaller place now, and European football is something that Liverpool is very, very used to. And at first, you know, you used to get tickets printed in the old days for the European ties, and it'd have like Liverpool versus, say for example, Genoa, and I'd have in brackets Italy written after it, as if you couldn't possibly know where in the world these were from. But in the modern culture, everybody can watch it, you know, media and everything. Everyone does recognise, and like I say, it's a smaller place, and there's, you know, basically as well, you know, the demographics of football fans. If you look at football stadiums in this country, a lot of them were built up. The most successful teams are from populous areas with a ground where people can walk to the match and they can give a big attendance, and so they can get the gate receipts in and pay the wages and the transfer fees from there. And so, but over time, as things evolve, that's less necessary, isn't it? Much less necessary. And then you've got people from afar watching particular teams because they like the culture of them, they like the sound of them, or whatever it is. And so that's legitimate too. So the Union at first was marking them out because they were from them streets. They were from that very area. And then they were going abroad and they were like, you know, this is England's representative in Europe. But it didn't take long for it to dawn on us that we were an English team and it suited them when we were winning. But apart from that, it got up their noses quite frankly, and they'd rather have anybody other than us. And at this point, it's like, well, okay, look, you don't like us, we don't like you, let's not associate. And then that's how I feel about it. But then it doesn't mean you shouldn't respect other people who do like the England team. That's fair enough. I understand that, but I don't have to accept it for myself.
Good stuff. Hey, we're rapidly running out of time. Before we do close, did want to at least get a take on the current team. What's I don't think last weekend aside, there's not a lot bad you can say. But what's your experience, I guess, of the team that we've got now?
I always felt I'd never see the likes of Dalglish, Souness, players like that again, and I always feared that I'd never see us like winning European Cups and leagues every week, like we are now again. And my lad's 22 now, and I thought he'll never see what I saw. He'll never understand he'll never go through what I went through, which was fantastic in the 80s. But now he is, and because he's of an age where, you know, I've said to Damian a few times, like, the run to Kiev was special for me because he was able to go out for a pint with me and go to all the matches with me, and then we went away to Kiev for 4 days with me lad and all his mates and all that. So I think it's a really special time at the moment. We're watching the best Liverpool team ever, I think, aside, as you say, from last week. But it is really special, and it's come at a time when I can enjoy it with me lad, you know, going out on the ale and having a laugh, and it's brilliant. It really, I'm enjoying going to match now. I've been going 50 years, but I'm probably enjoying it more now than I ever have done.
Wow. I mean, that's some statement from Richie to say this is the greatest Liverpool team ever, and I'll back him up. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, going back to the teams that we've seen, you know, the winning machine of the late 1970s, that conquered all, swept everything before us. You've got the team from like 87-8, which was the most entertaining team I'd seen until Jürgen turns up. And this has got a bit of everything. It's got more steel than the 87-8 team, but more flair than the 78-9 team. And look at the points total over the last 2 years. And we'll go on and get another 90 this year as well. And then it wins the European Cup and was, you know, very cruelly, in my opinion. Kiev would have been a very deserving, the way Liverpool approached the whole tournament and the rounds that they went through, it would have been a very worthy winner of that European Cup. But they dusted themselves down and learned how to win different types of games as well. And instead of being like Man City, who are a fantastic team who can definitely beat anybody by more goals than anybody else, Liverpool know how to win more types of different games than Man City do, and that's the key. So when you put all that together, you've never had it so good. And you know, my lad's the same age as Richie's lads, and so I got apart from being uncool dads, which of course we have that. The only time we're ever cool is, you know, when we're at the match with the boys, and it's great. And it's great for them to see. And one of the things that my dad, you know, God rest his soul, was always very pleased about was that he'd watched the team in the second division, and he said, you know, we supported Liverpool when Liverpool was nobody. It was just a little local team, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to see Liverpool in the 1960s achieve great things and watch world stars come from other countries in other teams to play on our pitch. And he always really wanted Liverpool to be in that company. And for our little team to be in that company was a great thing. And of course, Liverpool goes through a downturn in fortunes a decade or so ago. But to see a team of such great heights that my dad lived to see, that I experienced as a young man, and now it's for the next generation. I love watching the next generation getting on with it. They're strengthening our culture, their flags, their ideas, their passion, their songs, all that, their energy. It is their turn. But equally, it's still great for us to be in the background as well, the likes of the old boys and with our old stories. And it's just a fantastic time. And the sooner we can get back in the ground together, the better. And like I said, you know, next time you're over, it'll be great to see you, you know, whenever you get that chance. I know you can't at the moment, but, you know, I'll enjoy checking in with fellow fans like that. And yeah, great experience. We've never had it so good. And Jürgen, job for life. Stay here, man.
That'd be great. So I think we have to end there. Can't end on better than that. The best Liverpool team ever. Wow. Richie? Damian, been really great to have you on.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing, especially the stuff around Hillsborough. Charlie, Sean, good to see you.
Thank you both.
Yeah, pleasure, gentlemen. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cheers.
all
Pleasure.
John,
Absolutely.
thank you.